to like the people interested on the podcast who are aspiring and whatnot. I mean,
Yeah.
it is, and you can attest to this, and everybody I know can attest to it. It's a getting punched in the face contest. I mean, and there's no shame in stopping. It's just how many times you can get punched in the face, because you
Right.
will continually. I mean, I've recently been punched. I did a pilot and it's like all the way going and boom, punched in the face. And it's like,
Yep.
it never stops hurting. And at some point you just decide not to get up. I'm just not there yet.
You're listening to Screenwriters Need to Hear This with Michael Jamin.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Screenwriters Need to Hear This. I'm Michael Jamin. I got a special, very special guest today, Mr. Danny Zuker. You don't know who he is. You don't know who, we worked together for many years on a show called Just Shoot Me, but I want to, this guy is, you don't understand. This guy in the industry, he's known as a joke machine. He is known as the guy who comes in and hits that home run joke that makes everyone just laugh out loud in every episode. And so let me just talk about his credits, and I'm going to bring him in. He's got a ton of credits. So I guess we'll talk about this, but I guess he started out on the Arsenio Hall show as a joke writer. Evening Shade, which I forgot about that because I was a PA on that show, but not when he was there. Roseanne, listen to his credits. Roseanne, Grace Under Fire, Fired Up. Is it okay if I mention it? No, I guess I shouldn't mention it.
No, you can totally mention all the terrible ones.
Just Shoot Me, we worked together. Jesse, Off Center, which he created. Coupling, The Men's Room, another show he created. Surviving Suburbia, The Unusuals. Modern Family, which we've just got off of, so he was there for many seasons. But then also God, the Devil, and Bob. Norm, Watching Ellie. Oliver Bean, Come to Papa. Stacked. I mean, dude.
Stacked. I'm glad you finished on Stacked, by the way.
Yeah, that was, yeah. But what a, man, dude, you in this podcast right now, I would say you have the second best credits.
Who have you had? Who's better?
No, I'm talking about me.
Oh,
no, your credits are fantastic, dude. I mean,
a lot.
But
great memoir in me when I want to get out of the business.
Oh, but also you do. Well, you can start writing it now, I suppose.
How dare you?
How dare you? But also, can I even talk about this? You have a famous book about where you and Trump, you got into, this is before he was president, right?
Yeah, it was. It was, I think, 2014, back when everybody hated Trump, not just people who could read.
And so you just started trolling him on Twitter.
Just randomly, and just a small little tweet. It was like, and then he exploded. And then we went on to a months long with hundreds of tweets back and forth. And if you go back and look at it, because it went re-viral when he got the nomination. But if you look at it, he didn't, like, I was just a beta test. There's nothing he said about anybody else, whether it's like whoever he wants to talk about, that he didn't first try out on me to no effect.
Really?
It always bugged me when the Democrats would say, like, well, he's so hard to fight against. It's like, no, just read what I did. It's not that hard. I feel like anybody could dunk on him.
I remember thinking that he picked the wrong fight. You don't pick a battle of wits with a professional comedy writer. That's not what you want to do.
It's all I do. It's like me getting into a dunking contest with LeBron. It's not going to work out. I have one skill, period. I can't do anything other than this. It's all I was trained to do.
And this was at Modern Family where you were a writer. And did you bounce off any jokes off of anybody?
No, in fact, I mean, he started to go after Modern Family, like when he would, and that became like something he would pick on at a point. That when he started doing that, I went and I talked to the cast and the other writers and the co-creators, Steve and Chris, and I said, hey, like, my show, I would just go forward, but it's your show,
right?
And they were like, no, get him. It's like fine, and it was like, I have to say, like back then, you just have to remember, like. He was such a safe target. Like I would have to scroll to find one tweet that supported him, like one reply that supported him. And I'm sure it came from somebody in his office. What was weird and why I knew like, oh, shit's different is it went viral again in like 2016, 2017, at which point I got a lot of like, you're an asshole, YOUR. I got like, it was like, there was a lot of hate. Like people were on his side all of a sudden. I was like, what? Because it was Republicans, he was a joke.
Right,
and so it was like, whoa, it was really weird. And it was, I mean, it was, I continued to be a voice, but, I had threats, I was hacked. I had a lot of stuff go down that was like sort of Yeah, it was like it got a little bit scary. I mean, it's scarier for women who went up against him.
At some point, though, did he just block you?
Oh, within the middle of that, like by the end, after months, he blocked me, and I stayed blocked all through his presidency.
And then how did that become a book?
Well, I was doing it like at the at the midterms, the 2018 midterms. I was part of like a Democratic affiliation. Like there was some fundraiser, and they had asked me if I wanted to do like a live reading of my Twitter war. And like, Tim Simons from Veep was there, and he said he had an unenviable job of being Trump, and we did it. And then another friend of mine who does a lot of this stuff says we should put that out as a book, and then I just wound up doing it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it's 100 pages. It's like, it could not be shorter. And I comment on the little tweets as they go along. And yeah, so, but
so
and then I gave it to charities like, legal aid for people at the border and Planned Parenthood, like all the things.
Oh, good. Oh, now tell me. So I remember, it's so funny because we worked together 20 something years ago.
I know a lot.
But you remember, just so my audience knows, you were the guy who all of us wanted to impress in the room to make laugh. You were the guy because it was your approval. Yeah, it was because if we could make Danny laugh, then yeah, because you were the home run hitter.
But that room I felt like that room had a lot of heavy hitters. It's very flattering to know that. I mean, I always thought, I thought you and your partner Seaver were like, it was just everybody was good.
We were young. We were all baby writers, but. I mean, there were definitely a lot. They were really talented. I think that might have been one of the most talented rooms I've been in, to be honest.
It was certainly one of those rooms where, like, because Just Shoot Me was a show that really survived on jokes. Like, it was like the way it was built. It was like it wasn't about like a lot of touchy feely moments. Or we get to them occasionally, but what it was most successful at was like, what are the jokes in that world?
Yeah.
And we had a lot. Yeah, it was a lot of really good people. So.
Man, and then, but you started, I forgot about this, as a joke writer on the Arsenio Hall show. Yeah,
it was weird. I mean, I was quite young. I was like, I think like 24 or 25, and I managed to get like a PA job on that show because I worked on as a PA on another show with a producer there. And anyway, I got there, and we're doing run through things, and writers there had 13-week contracts, and in the first 13 weeks, that show became an amazing hit. Like, he was on the cover of Time magazine, and he wound up purging a lot of the staff on a Friday. And I just went home. I went home that night, and long ago, and on a typewriter, looking at newspapers, typed up a bunch of jokes. And on Monday, handed my submission to some of the other writers there to put it in with the packet. Because I knew they were looking, and they knew I wanted to write. And on Monday, like, he did one of my jokes, and then like. On Tuesday, he did 2 of my jokes. And on Thursday, I had a good amount of jokes in. And on that Friday, the following Friday, he hired me.
Wow.
So it was like, but I've been doing jokes, it's funny. I was like, we were doing a move in our house. Like, we were remodeling something, I had to move out. So go through all these boxes. And in one box, I found, my Arsenio jokes, like a big book of my Arsenio jokes. And I thought, this is a gold mine. I can sort of recycle some of these and put them in things. And I started reading through them, and they were all such shit. It was like it was nothing salvageable, but I guess it worked for there.
That's so, because I was a joke writer on the Mike and Maddie show for a little bit, and I had
this. That's right.
But I would go through my material. I have the same, like a binder, like gold, right? And I looked at it recently. I was like, "There's nothing in here. It's terrible. It's terrible.
Would never hire this fucking guy."
But was it your goal, like in high school, to be like to work like late night or what, or scripted?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I really, I wanted. In high school, I was doing some stand up poorly, because I had nothing to say, and but I really did. I wanted to be on Letterman or SNL, and I got out of college, and I put together this reel that people seemed to like, and I got into Letterman as like, I talked to like Gerard Mulligan and a couple of people there, and I made a submission, and I got my first rejection letter from them, and the second one from SNL, and I still have those, and they're because you go through that. I wound up getting a job with Howard Stern, who was doing some Fox pilots. He was going to be the show that followed Joan Rivers' show. Right. And they never went, but it was a couple months producing a week of shows, practice shows. And a couple good things came out of that. One, I've been friends with them for 30 something years as a result. Baba Booey was in my wedding, and
Right.
but then I also met a producer on that show who liked me, and he brought me out to he brought me out. He said, I have a PA job out here if you want it, and so it all led from that. So
But you never decided to like resubmit to SNL or Letterman?
I did. I mean, I was I was absolutely planning, but then I wound up getting an opportunity to be, I wanted to, and then I came out here. It's funny because before I got the Arsenio Hall, um, this is a really horrible story. Before I got the Arsenio Hall show, I got uh I was like up for like to be a baby writer. If you remember, Pat Sajak had a late night talk show,
Mm-hmm.
and it was
Yeah.
Pat Sajak show, and a lot of my friends, a lot of good people were there, like Fred Wolf, who went on to write a lot of stuff for all those movies for
Mm-hmm.
David Spade and Chris Farley. But like, so I was submitting packages, and the head writer there, this guy Monty, I don't mind trashing him on this. He put me through the ringer. Like I kept submitting, like over the course of weeks of submitting to him, and with notes. And it was like fine. I was like young and prolific. Anyway, I wind up going in, and I get there, and there's another guy. There's writer Rob Young, who went on to write for Leto for many, many years. And Monty said, "Here's the thing: you're both baby writers. So if you don't mind, I'll make you a baby writer team. It'll mean splitting a salary and all that, and you have to be okay with it." And we're like, I was broke and had got no credit card debt. We were like, "Yeah, let's do it." My family was in town, my mom and my two sisters, and my stepdad, and we're like all getting ready to go out and celebrate. And as I'm getting out the door, the phone rings, and it's Monty, and he said, "You know what? He gave me a key to the office, by the way. We've reconsidered. We're just going to go with Rob."
Oh my
Like after
God.
offering me the job, and I literally like my knees buckled, and it was like the darkest meal ever. So I was really depressed for exactly 12 hours, and the next day, Marla, this woman who wound up to produce the Arsenio Hall show, called me and said, "I can't offer you a writing job yet, but if you want, you can come in here and be like a segment PA." And I was
Right.
like, "Yes." And so that's all I wanted was the opportunity. So it was like literally I had disappointment for 12 hours, and
But it's still, that is crippling, that
it was
disappointment.
crippling. I've never forgotten the.
Yeah, I feel it just the way you said it.
It was really cruel. I mean, it was like I described. I mean, to like the people interested on the podcast who are aspiring and whatnot. I mean,
Yeah.
it is, and you can attest to this, and everybody I know can attest to it. It's a getting punched in the face contest. I mean, and there's no shame in stopping. It's just how many times you can get punched in the face, because you will
Right.
continually. I mean, I've recently been punched. I did a pilot, and it's like all the way going, and boom, punched in the face, and it's like
Yep.
it never stops hurting. And at some
Mhm.
point, you just decide not to get up. I'm just not there yet. But
Right.
but
People don't. Yeah, I think it's important to know. Like even us at our level, it's none of it's a cakewalk. Everything's a lot of rejection.
Well, it's true, and I'll never forget this because there's a writer on Arsenio Hall show. He's about like 8 or 9 years older than I was, and like we were pretty young staff, and we were going like all the way to Vegas. And why didn't you ever come to Vegas with us? And he's like, and he pulled me aside. He took me for lunch. He said, "You're good. You don't want to stay here in late night your whole career. You should like. I'm taking the time. A friend of mine is doing a pilot. I'm helping him with it, and I'm putting and I think you should be thinking about like starting to spec out half hour." And I thought, okay, he was very avuncular. Well, that pilot he was working on and his friend was Larry David, who was working on the
Mm,
Seinfeld pilot. He was Larry Charles,
right.
and so it was a real inspirational thing that moved me forward. And years later, when I'm first getting like my first, like I'm a story editor on like Evening Shade or one of those things, and I remember talking to him, and I said, "It must be nice to not worry about the next thing." And he's like, "Oh, I worry every single day." And
This is who Larry Charles said
Larry
this.
Charles, yeah.
Hmm.
And I thought, is he just saying that to make me feel good? But then, as I saw like the people from Friends leaving the
Hmm.
hottest show on Friends, like not, it doesn't carry over. It's like you get in the door more, but you're
Right.
still subject to the same humiliations most of the time.
Why did they tell you? Why did he tell you you don't want to be in late night for the rest of your career?
He thought that he said, if you, he more said it this way. He said, "Do you want to be in late night? Do you have aspirations to do more? Because it can be it can be like a
Hmm.
golden handcuffs, because what can
Right.
happen is it becomes comfortable and you won't do anything else. If you want to do something else," and he thought, and he said, he thought I was good enough. He thought I had the ability to go do something else. And that was all it was. It wasn't like he was belittling it. He just
Hmm.
knew I had aspirations beyond it. And he said, while you're working on something good is a great time to be working on the next thing. And
Right.
I took him seriously. I mean,
But you had to learn a whole different thing. You had to learn how to write stories. That's a whole different thing.
but didn't you find this for you? So you start as a joke writer. You don't know if you can do it consistently until you do it, and then you find out, oh, I can. It's the same
Right.
thing with half hour. It's like, I don't know if I can do this consistently until you find out you can.
But I remember the first couple specs I wrote. The first were terrible. Then I wrote a couple that were decent. And then after I wrote that first decent one that got me an agent, I remember I got signed by an agent, and then I remember thinking, I don't know if I can do this again. I think that's it. I think I got lucky.
Oh, dude, even to this day, I have to tell you, like I'm utterly convinced that every job I have is the last job I'll ever have for my whole career,
Right.
and that this is the script where I'll be found out.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's imposter syndrome, I think. But I don't know. I've never met somebody who turned in a script and was so freaking proud of it to me, or something like that. It's like, oh, this one's going to kill, where that was any good. It's
Right.
like that kind of confidence doesn't means you haven't like questioned it.
And what were those early days like for you on those early shows like Roseanne, and like what was that like?
I loved it. I mean, because I did discover I was good at it, and they were
Uh,
like, it was competitive, which I liked,
mhm.
and it was like, I held my own. I was like, I felt like I did a really good job on Evening Shade, and they recommended me to
Right.
Roseanne, and I was a good hire there. And Roseanne was one of these situations where like 30 something writers, because she would hire all these people, but there was one like main room, or like two or of the main writers, and it was very egalitarian. It wasn't just like, okay, you're a co-executive producer, you're going to be in that main room, it was egalitarian. And I had worked, as a second job, I worked myself into the main room. Now keep in mind that also meant working on weekends, but it was still,
What do you mean as a second job? What do you mean?
well, no, it wasn't a second job. It was like I said that it meant that if I got into the main room,
Uh-huh.
I would work longer for the same amount of money
Oh,
at
oh,
that.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right. And they were, yeah, 'cause the hours were really tough on Roseanne. I
They
remember
were
that.
hard. No,
Yeah. I remember it's funny, I remember getting interviewed to be in the night PA on Roseanne. I was like, the night PA? Yeah, you start around midnight. I'm like, whoop, start at midnight? That doesn't sound like a good job.
yeah. I remember I think at 1:30 in the morning, Rob Hewlin at one point saying, "Guys, if let's focus, we can get out of here early."
But it wasn't. So what time? What were your hours like? What time did you usually work until?
It depended, but like, 'cause she would blow up the script several times, and you had to deliver it. And
Yeah.
sometimes we'd have to start from scratch. And so we saw more than I saw several sunrises. We called it working from
Oh,
Howard to Howard. Like you come in listening to
yeah.
Howard Stern, and you go home listening to Howard's.
Oh my God. And that's rough. I mean, I've been on a couple
I mean,
shows
I
where
was
you do
young
that.
though. It helped to be young.
Right, I know. Imagine doing that now. You're like, I don't know, guys. It's right, 5-ish. It's getting dark. I gotta go home now.
I want to eat my dinner at 4:30 now, so it's like different.
Yeah. So then all your other jobs afterwards, it's just interesting to follow how, were they just mostly connections or your agent submitting you? How did you,
Almost all were so. What happened was, so Evening Shade led to a connection because Victor Fresco is friends with Rob Hewlin, and
Mhm.
then Tim Doyle, who was coming in also, and so I got there. From there, when I went to Grace Under Fire, it was Kevin Abbott. It was like a splinter group of us who went on to that. From there, Kevin wound up getting like a Brillstein deal off of that. And then they were like, they were asking who else is good over there, and he recommended me. So then I got a Brillstein deal and did my first pilot.
Right.
And when that didn't go, I was somewhere like on vacation with my wife, and I got a call from my agent about like, hey, they're looking to bring somebody on the show. Just shoot me. And I
Mhm.
read the script, which I liked. I'd seen the first pilot, and I was wrapping up, and so I don't, how many you were there from the beginning, right?
From the pilot, yeah.
Yeah. So what was how many did you do that first season? Because I came in
Six.
yeah. So I came in on episode 6 of that first
You were
season.
there. You were there for the first episode, final episode of season one. I don't remember that.
Yes, I was. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
And so uh yeah. So it was yeah. So that's how that led, and then from there, that led to a lot of different things, and how it is. You start to develop a name, so then you can at least
Right.
get in the door, a little bit. So
And then, but even now, okay, so how does it work for you now? What is it? I mean, even like I know you just had a pilot. What was that process like?
Well, it's hopefully it's going to be alive again. But we got into some a little good news. But I was talking about a couple pilots. But like I have the same manager as I'm at Brillstein again as a management company, and over COVID they were like, hey, you want to sit down with Kevin Neal, and he has this idea.
Oh, right.
Kevin and I wound up writing something that I really love.
Here we
And
go. Let's give him a shout out.
oh,
There's
you
his
got
book.
it.
Yeah, because Kevin was a Kevin's so sweet. He was actually the voice on this animated show we did. He's over there. And
Oh, really? Which one?
Glenn Martin DDS. So I worked with Kevin
Oh,
for
that's right. I remember that.
years. And he's the sweetest guy. And
Oh,
so
he's been a pleasure to be in my
yeah.
life. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's just it was a real blessing.
Well, I'm just gonna say, so when he put his book out, I was like, yeah, I gotta help promote his book because he's just the sweetest guy,
Yeah, he is. He's the greatest. But there's a perfect example. So it's Kevin Nealon, who has all this acclaim. I don't have no acclaim, and like we write a pilot that's great, and we still get fucked around with. It's like sort of what I was saying. It's like it never ends.
Yeah, no, it doesn't end. And so yeah, so just so people understand this work. So you sold it to your studio paid you.
So the studio, yeah, and it was like developed for TBS,
Okay.
and then the whole TBS structure went out the window,
Mhm.
like in the midst of doing it, and we just got screwed. Now it came back to us, and knock wood, we have something. But and then I'm just developing other things right now.
Yeah, so you'll try to shop that and right. And so
Yeah, I mean, this is the first year though when because I've been working on this animated show, Housebroken. It's their second season. It's on Fox. My first animated show I've ever.
Oh, I know that. Oh, wait, I know that one.
It's with Gabby and Jen Crittenden and
Right.
Susan Kudrow. It's like a bunch of pets in group therapy,
Right.
which is really a funny idea.
Right.
And it was super fun to do. When it ended, like in I don't know, September. I mean, we're still doing post production, but when it ended in September, I had a couple offers to staff or things like this, and I said, unless it was something I really wanted to do, this is the first time I decided not to do that, not to run it in my whole career, because I felt like I don't want to do that right now. I'm tired of racing, and I got to travel, and I wanted to do certain things and work on what I wanted to work on, and just sort of have faith in the process, because you know how it is. You miss a lot of life if you don't do that. So
yeah, well, there's that. Yeah, it's like that trade-off. Do you go on staff or try to develop on your own? And you're just
and I'll go, but I also it's just a trade-off. If I don't go on staff now and I want to go on staff later, I'll find something. It's like I'm not going to just not do it there.
Right.
So.
Hey, it's Michael Jamin. If you like my videos and you want me to email them to you for free, join my watch list. Every Friday, I send out my top 3 videos. These are for writers, actors, creative types. You can unsubscribe whenever you want. I'm not going to spam you, and it's absolutely free. Just go to michaeljamin.com/watchlist. All right, so now you're just coming up with ideas or teaming up with other people.
Yeah, I'm actually supervising a couple pilots that I like, and I'm writing one, developing one of my own, and it's been super fun, and I'll start submitting again when shows get picked up. But It was fun. I got to go around the world.
Well, go around the world for what? Oh, because you're on yourself. You just
yeah,
yeah. Right. Interesting. And so what was like? Oh, all right, so your last big credit was Modern Family. So what was that called? What was that like?
Wow. I mean,
what a credit.
Well, here's the thing. So I'm 44 when that show gets, picked up. And, especially like in comedy, right? You think like I went prior. So it's kind of funny. So prior to Modern Family, a year before that happened, a full year, we had a writer's strike. And right before that, Steve Levitan, who we know from Just Shoot Me, and Chris Lloyd were doing a show with Kelsey Grammer and Patricia Heaton called Back to You.
Back to You, yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't get hired for it. And I was like, really? I've done everything for it. And it would have meant like I could have logged my deal. And then the writer's strike happened. It was the first time I went a year, like basically almost a year without working on anything. Right. And so I started to spec out a pilot that was a little bit more dramatic. and wound up getting hired on a drama that Noah Hawley was doing in New York called The Unusuals. And I was like, and it was really fun to do a drama and easier by a mile. And so, and it was like, I was the funny guy in this, like people, other writers would come to me if they need, because it should have had a wry aspect to it in this cop drama. And so I could punch up and I was able to write a drama, a script. And it was great. And that show didn't get picked up. But then I had a couple offers on other dramas when Steve called me and said, hey, Chris and I have done this pilot. I think you should come in and take a look at it. You might be interested in it. Now, in my head, I'm thinking, I can't wait to watch this pilot and say, no, I don't want to do it. Because I can get hired on this stuff. But I got 5 minutes into the Modern Family pilot. And honestly, to me, it's the best comedy pilot I'd ever seen.
Yeah.
Like for just like it felt so fully formed already.
Yeah.
Like with that cast, and it just like everything clicked in a way that was magical. And I was like, I got to get hired on the show. And so people asked, did you know it was going to be a hit, or did you know this? There was a lot of pressure that first season to do something as good as the pilot and to be in that world. But we could feel it. You could feel something building. Like you could feel this is something special. It was an amazing ride. And I'm sort of glad to have that happen to me in my 40s, particularly after a year of sort of, slightly slimmer pickings, because I really appreciated it. And I knew I knew this doesn't go on forever. Like, I know that that's a very unusual and rarefied thing to happen.
It's kind of like the last big hit, you know?
It feels like it. I mean, it's especially a broadcast hit. It's like, it went from the beginnings of like streaming is a possibility to like, no one watches network television at the time it's on anymore.
Right. What's interesting about, I always love like writing in that show is like you literally watched those children grow up to be adults, you know, on the air.
Same age. So Luke, the kid who played Luke, and the kid who played Manny, and Alex, for that matter, were all the same age as my twin girls. My son was younger. So I used to joke that I got to watch the kids who make me money grow up with the kids who cost me money.
And how odd is it to write new stories? Like, it just seems like it's almost odd that because they're older now and you're writing stories for them being older, you know?
Yeah, but it's like that is actually, for me, I did not mind that because I felt like in those first couple seasons, it was very, we had all purged our lives for like stories. And so I was just waiting for my kids to grow up and do something more interesting.
Right.
And I think, and I think a lot of us were. And so I didn't mind that you were moving into those stories. I mean, it gets hard though. I mean, you joke like, everybody's like, it wasn't as good in season 8 or whatever. It's like, well, let me put it this way. It's like the most interesting family, most like the Obamas, let's say. When they're at a dinner party, they have at most 15 to 20 stories they tell.
Yeah.
That's it. Those are their go-to, and they're the most interesting family Like, we did 250 episodes where each family had like that. It's hard, it's different, and we're not like animated, so they have to be somewhat grounded. It's not like you can do like meta episodes like you could do like on The Simpsons or things like that. Although I wish we could have. But
I always talk about like how writers mine their own life for stories, but you famously took a story from your life, I think, right? And used it in at least one of the episodes. It was the fire. I'm thinking of the fireman.
Yeah, I didn't write it, but I told it in the room. I had a it was like I live in Manhattan Beach, and the EMT workers there are like famously good-looking dudes. Like it makes me question where I am on the sexuality spectrum there. Anyway, I wound up having an attack, which I thought was a kidney stone. It turned out to be gallbladder. I was like, but it's 2 a.m, and I wake up and I feel like I'm being stabbed to death.
Right.
And my wife was like, Annette, you got to call 911. You got to call 911. It's like, she was like, okay, it's going to be fine. She calls 911. And then I'm on the floor and I don't see her when I hear the fireman like knocking on the door. I'm like, Annette, where are you? And then she comes out of her closet and she's dolled up, like because it was the middle of the night. She's looking. You dressed up for the fireman, and we just did that word for word there.
Right. So you go in and you tell the story the next day in the writer's room, and then it goes right in the script.
It's amazing, and it's amazing because you start to lose any shame. So like one of the things, like I had known Brad Walsh, who was partnered with Corrigan and Walsh.
Right.
I've known him for many, many years before this. Worked on a show with him, a couple shows with him, but we get into that first season of Modern Family, and we're like looking for stories, and he's like, and I see him struggling, and he's like, okay, fine. My sister and I were part of an ice dancing team. Like, it's something he wouldn't tell us ever, except we needed it.
He needed stories, right? Oh, you'll give your mother. I mean, people don't realize, like, it's late at night, you're trying to come up with a story, and you'll saw off someone's arm for a story. You know, like, a good story is so hard to get. Yeah.
I've only there's a time on, like, it was actually Just Shoot Me, I think it was, but like we're looking for a story on some kind, and it was the only time, I won't tell it here, but it was like that. My wife, at the time, she actually said, I would rather you didn't do this because they'll watch it. But it was this very simple story. It was like I used to fly my in-laws out here before they moved out here to come see the grandkids. I was like, of course you're going to come over there and say I'd fly. And I do this back and forth. Happy to do it. I'm a generous guy. Life's been good. But then I found out, like, they'd get the ticket and then at the airport would pay for the upgrade to first class. And it's like sort of like, wait a minute. And it shouldn't have bothered me, but it did.
Wait, but they were paying the upgrade out of pocket. They were paying for the upgrade.
They were paying for the upgrade, but it was like, I guess you can pay for the upgrade. You can, like, what do you like?
Oh, if they can pay for that, they could pay for the ticket. You're saying? Yes, I got it.
But of course, that was not like. And even as when I was pitching the story, I said, "This is going to be my problem, not theirs." But I said that, so I put the kibosh. I stopped, but that's about the only time we've all embarrassed people in our lives, you know.
And so yeah, I mean, but basically, there are other stories on Modern Family you took from your life as well. Basically.
Oh, tons! All of us did.
Yeah.
We had one, like, so I have twin daughters, and at one point, like, so we had to go to a parent teacher conference when they were like in, I don't know, second grade, and my daughter, it's Lily and Charlie. My daughter Charlie, I would tell my daughter Charlie, you know, we're sitting there, and it's and then I say, hey, so your dad and I, you know, tonight your dad and I are going to need to split up, and it's like, so do you have a preference? And it's like, and she just thought about it for a second. She goes, well, I love Dad, but I think you'll take better care of me. Mm-hmm. And she thought like we were, and she was so calm about us splitting up. Like, she just like, yeah, I get, like, obviously that's so she was like, it was just like so weird. And so we had Luke basically do that with Claire and Phil. So
yeah, wow, that's so, yeah, it's like you just gotta be conscious for your life. But go ahead, what you were gonna say?
No, we had a lot. I mean, Steve's kids walked in on him having sex. In the pilot, when Luke, they do the thing, we're going to shoot you, Luke. That was the deal if you shoot your sister. He has actual footage of him doing that to his son.
Yeah, I remember thinking that I remember watching the pilot thinking this had to be from his life, and it doesn't sound right. He shouldn't have done that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Now, when you go about creating a pilot, other than the Kevin Nealon thing, which is, you know, a little different because he has this, like, how do you start thinking about ideas?
It's a variety of ways. Like, there's some that are just like, oh, this is an idea that's been sort of itching, that I've been itching to do. I mean, in the day, you know, I would think but it's just an idea that'll get in your head. The other way is somebody comes to you with an idea or a piece of casting. I have one right now that was kind of, I'm not going to talk about it here, but it was like, but it's because I'm down the road, but it was just a wild idea that came to me with like some good casting associated, but it was just one line and it's broad and silly. And I was like, how am I going to make that work?
Right.
And I actually went away and on a trip and somebody just clicked how I would do it. And so I've written up a treatment, and so hopefully that thing goes. But it's sometimes it's an actor. Sometimes you read an article.
Do you develop sometimes with actors? Because we develop for comedians, but never actors really.
It depends. I have developed for an actor. They're usually a comic actor, though.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, that's about it. Yeah, I have. I mean, I don't know. Where do you guys get what do you do with your ideas? I mean, don't they mostly come from your heads? Are you talking about it, or it's such a hard target to chase?
It is a hard part of it that we struggle with, because you always hear this is like, why are you the only ones who can tell this story? And you're like, well, we're not. You know, I mean, and the other thing is like, well, I'm a writer. I can kind of make up stuff. Like, but they always want to hear, like, why is it? So you have to always, it always has to be personal, which is a little hard. It's like you run out of the personal things. And so,
Sound like an obvious. This is going to sound like a question, and maybe this just it speaks to me not being a good guy. But I know this, but don't you lie?
Well, you exaggerate. You basically say, you try to extrapolate. Well, this didn't happen to me, but something similar happened to me.
But I'll be like, okay, so this is based on a guy I went to school with.
Right. But is that good enough? Because then they'll say, okay, but then get the guy who you went to school with. Get him in here. It's his story.
No. I mean, no. But I will say this is my I don't know. I can. First of all, I do think when you're writing a show, no matter what, you're putting yourself
Right.
in all of those characters. I think it's a silly request. I do try, even if it was like something science fiction or it was something like broad and big, I will always try to craft an origin story that is usually mostly true, but just like, I had this experience. I thought, like, how do I explain? Like, I'm doing something with somebody right now, an animated show that I'm supervising that has a lot to do with mental health stuff. And this
Right.
girl cracked it. And it was like, so when I'm coming in, I say, like, I've tried to do mental health issues for a long time, never found the key. I think she did. This is like, and so that's my part of the sales pitch in this. And
It's so interesting because we don't even supervise. It's not that I'm opposed to it, but there's not a lot of money to supervise something, and you wind up doing a lot of the work. So,
well, I'm very careful with what I pick in the supervision, and I'm also very careful what my rate will be. So for me, it was like,
okay.
But it's like, no, but it's like, I'll take, somewhere along the way, it's going to be a gamble, but I want to be with somebody who I know is going to, and I'm very explicit about that. I always say, like, if I'm going to wind up co-writing this, we are going to be back here to renegotiate because my deal is very specifically not for script fees. And
oh, really? Okay.
yeah. And I'm pretty clear with that with my management and stuff like that. Because if I'm going to do that, then I'm going to take a piece of it. I don't want to. I want to help them do it, and then I'll run it if it goes.
Right.
But I'm just, when I was younger, I had a couple people. I had one person in particular who was sort of supervising me, who took over something, and I feel like crash landed it before I was ready. And I'm so careful not to do that. I'm just there. So I really do want to make it that person's show.
But the problem is, we haven't done this. I haven't experienced, but my fear is you'll turn it in the studio, will not be happy with it, with their work, with their draft, and then you will have to do all that work. You will have to do all that rewriting.
Well, I'll have to do some work, but I'm picking people I think who's have a pretty good sense of.
Right.
I'm betting on certain people. I'm not betting on like somebody who is just like a comic. I'm betting on somebody who is at least writing or has like some work to do.
And so those people, they don't come to you out of I should be clear, they probably don't come to you off the street. They come to you through channels, through agents, managers, stuff like that.
Yeah, or through like pods. There's somebody we're developing this, or we love this pitch, and that's sort of what happened with this animated one I'm doing. So
right, interesting. Now, have you done a lot of animation? That's something I didn't. No, you got all that.
Just this Housebroken show. That's the first one I've ever done.
And was that also on Zoom?
All on Zoom, practically. Yeah, all on Zoom. But it was a real blast. I didn't mind it.
Right. Well, you have to be in your house, get to relax too.
It was kind of fun. It was, I mean, and also just having something like, it was, again, we went into the pandemic. Nothing was going on during that. I was just sort of sitting home writing pilots and doing stuff. And I was like, oh God, am I done? Again, am I done? Then I got a call from, Gabby and Jen and that production company that if I was interested, I could come there. And it's like, I loved I love those guys. And it's all these, a bunch of really great people over there. It's like basically the whole cast of Veep is in that thing.
Oh yeah, I know.
And it was just like, it's just been a blast. So
wow. And I also know I noticed you've been performing a lot too.
Yeah, I have. I started doing stand up a little bit. I took a little break, but I've been going. Yeah, I took like a 30-something year break from stand up, but it's been fun because I now have stuff to talk about, and I don't care what happens because I already have a career. Like there's no stakes in it at all.
And you go. I mean, and so you go up. How often do you go up?
Well, when I was doing it more, I was going up a couple times a week, and little club shows. I was actually, shortly before the pandemic was going through a divorce, but I was dating somebody who was a comic, and she did a lot of club shows and would put me on. And then we just recently broke up, so now I need another into doing these club shows. But I wound up going to Edinburgh. A friend of mine who's a comic was doing a show in Edinburgh at Fringe Fest, and I opened for him like for 4 shows, and it was really a blast.
It's so interesting. We're talking about doing that. What was your experience there? I would definitely want to talk about that.
Loved it. Yeah, we have to talk because I'm actually thinking about putting something up there myself.
Oh, we got to talk now. We definitely have to.
Yeah, we'll talk afterwards.
Wow. No, I want to stop this conversation. But do you want to do more? It's so interesting. Like, do you want to do more performing? Because
I love to perform. I don't need to do it as a career. What I find is I just like the process of it.
Right.
I like the way it makes me. Like, I had this epiphany when I started getting up on stage. Like right before the pandemic, a friend of mine was doing the DC Improv, and at this point, I had needed a feature, and so I was like, she's like, "Do you have 15, 20 minutes?" And at the time, I had 5, and she's like, "And I had a week to go." It's like, well, I'll figure it out. So just on all the way over, I did it. And I got there and I'd written some stuff. And like, there was a joke I had in the act that I thought it's gold. Like, I just know this joke is going to work as an opener.
Yeah.
And the first night, it didn't really work that well. And I came back. My first night was a little rocky, but there were 2 shows a night. So the first night was a little rocky. Not terrible. It was not like I bombed, but it was just not terrible. But from second show, I started to figure stuff out and it got good, except that joke didn't work again. And I was like, well, I don't know. It'll work tomorrow. Third try still doesn't work. So fourth show, I abandoned it. But what was interesting about it for me was this. I'll write a joke for a script at a table read, and it won't go well. And I will be convinced I didn't go well at the table read, but it's a good joke and it will work. And I'll fight for it, and sometimes it'll get on. And now I'm thinking, it should be a very obvious realization to anybody who's not a complete narcissist. But to me, it's like, maybe I don't know.
But the thing is, Danny, if I had to bet, if I had to say, what comedy writer do I know could go in, put together a stand-up act in an evening, or in a couple of hours, who could write a freaking 5 or 10 minutes in a couple of hours and kill, it would be you, because it's just easy. If one thing bombs, whatever, you'll pitch on it to get the one that works.
I feel like that's the case for me. And I also think, like, this, there's like the 2 kinds of comedy writers. There's the extroverted ones, and then there's the ones who are just like quiet, but like, good on the page and like, really, and will pitch. They're assassins when they pitch, but they're not like, they don't have that they're not frustrated performers.
Right.
And I just really enjoy it. I mean, like, and again, I enjoy it wherever it is. Like, I enjoy it in a club with 10 people or in a theater with like 200. It's like, for me, it's been really kind of, it's just about the process. Like, I have no goal to like, I'm not looking to get a Netflix hour. Like, none of that appeals. None of that happens. I just like doing it. I find that the process of it works a different part of my brain. And like like I said, like in the course of a couple of years, my marriage ended, my job of 11 years ended, and then the world ended. And it was like, so I was like so it was like, it was a lifeline.
Were you did that panic you at all? That's a lot to hit at one time.
Because by the time the world ended, my marriage that was going through 9 months, and I'd survived the worst of it. And Annette and I are like, we're super close. We're best friends. It's like the best. And then the show ended, which was a little bit traumatic, and it was going on. But having survived the uncertainty of a show ending and a marriage ending, by the time like everything shut down, I felt like I was like, oh, I've been living in chaos for a while. Come on in, I'll show you. It's like, let me show you around.
Let me show you. And that's kind of what your act is now? I mean, or no?
No, my most of my act, I mean, it depends. I do a lot of my act about like, oh my God, how far have I fallen? Or I talk a lot about like, when a joke doesn't work or something like that. It's like, oh, they think it doesn't work. The Academy of Television Motion Pictures and Sciences really liked it though. And like, I'll talk about like I'll be falsely humble about that.
Right.
And also it's been interesting to discover when I go out to a lot of these club shows, I am considerably older than a lot of the comics who are there. But like in my head, it doesn't feel that way to me, but I can tell that that's how I perceive. And that's also been interesting to talk about, just being older.
Do you think, because so many of these comics want to get into actually sitcom writing, and do you think they look at you like you're the guy?
There are some who look to me but you know this. Can't you tell when someone's talking to you and wants an opportunity or is just like being cool? I can usually tell.
Well, but I wonder if not that they're like sucking up to you, but if they're just in awe of you because of everything you've written,
I think there are some people. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that they would be impressed with that aspect of it. I'm pretty good at putting people at ease, though, because that makes me uncomfortable if people start doing that. I mean, I know it's all coming from a good place. I just
Right.
I don't like it's too much pressure to be vaunted. It's like I will like, because all I can think of when someone's looking up to me, it's like I'm gonna so let you down. It's like you have no idea how disappointed you're gonna be.
See, it's interesting because that whole reinventing. Okay, so even in the comedy room, even I remember like there were times you'd be on stage in there were 10 of us in the writers' room, and you're on stage, and so it seems like you really are a performer. But this is like a big deal, reinventing yourself, especially at this age. It's very intimidating, I think. Or no, not for you.
No, I love it. It's intimidating. I am so much more afraid of stagnation and things like that, and it's and it's interesting because especially as you get older and in comedy writing, my whole career there were like you'd hear like a certain subset of writers as they got into 40s talking about ageism, which I'm not saying doesn't exist. Of course it exists, but what's interesting is some of the voices that were complaining the loudest about ageism, I would see on the show, and then they'd be pitching something, and then somebody like younger might say, "Yeah, that feels like a little familiar." It's like, "Hey, it worked on this," and then they would disregard. It's like this is what worked on Growing Pains. It's going to work here,
right.
and I really clocked that. And so for me, part of doing stand up and hearing I say very I'm interested in comedy as an expiration date, and I think writers don't understand that. It's like a lot of comedy people don't understand it. It's like, yes, this was really funny, and you could be upset that you can't say this word or this word anymore, but you rolled your eyes at the generation that came before you too. Remember that, and you have to it is constantly changing. The big experiences I've had is I can't wait to show my kids when they would start to get older. This is classic comedy, and to watch when you watch it again there are certain things that hold up, but a lot of it doesn't hold up that well.
Yeah, right. If someone said okay, they want to put you on tour and you tour whatever, like a road comic, would you do it?
I mean, if I might. I mean, now it's different. If you asked me this before the age of Zoom, I'd probably say no. Now, if I got to that point where I would want to be good enough, I have many opportunities to cut the line, given who my status. I know people who if I wanted to, I could suck up to somebody in a much bigger club and say, "Hey, give me a couple spots here," in a way that younger comics wouldn't.
Right.
But I desperately don't want to do that because I want to be good enough to get that spot. I'll work it out there, and when I get there, so. Yeah, I don't know. I have a weird ethos about the whole thing. It's probably just a way of me procrastinating doing more. But
that's it's so interesting. I know you do have a little bit of a time limit, but I want to talk more off camera. But I want to. Is there anything I can plug or send if they want to know more about what you're doing?
I'm on all social media at Danny Zuker, Zuker, and yeah, what else? I got nothing to promote right now. I don't know. I don't have any dates till after the New Year, so I don't know what those are going to be. Where I'm going to be performing, but yeah, that's it.
But follow them there to know when your next pilot gets picked up or whatever. When your next show. Yeah.
Thank you for saying when.
When. All right, everyone. Thank you so much, Danny. I can't thank you so much. I'm so happy that you did this. This is.
I'm so happy to talk to you, man. You've always been one of my favorites. So.
Dude,
a handful of people in there that I.
Dude. You're kind. So that's it, everyone. Thank you so much. Continue. What am I going to say at the end of the podcast? Well, if you want to get on my free newsletter, go sign up for that. I send it out once a week at michaeljamin.com/watchlist. And that's it. Continue following, on Instagram and TikTok at Michael Jamin Writer. Okay, thank you so much, Danny. Thank you again. All right.
You're welcome.
This has been an episode of Screenwriters Need to Hear This with Michael Jamin. If you'd like to support this podcast, please consider subscribing, leaving a review, and sharing this podcast with someone who needs to hear today's subject. For free daily screenwriting tips, follow Michael on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Michael Jamin Writer. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Phil A. Hudson. This episode was produced by Phil Hudson and edited by Dallas Crane. Until next time, keep writing.